She was born into a well-connected family of theater professionals. Two of her relatives would become early legendary film directors. Several of her family members were playwrights. She took up dancing as a child. She did it because her sister was in a dance class to cure her flat feet. Agnes DeMille was born on this day in New York City in 1905. She would go on to become a legendary choreographer and dancer. When you look at her life at the very beginning, there was nothing about it that would make you think, yes, she's going to be a legendary dancer and choreographer. Her parents at first refused to allow her to go into the dance world. And the truth is this: she lacked the flexibility and the technique that was needed. And she didn't have, at least at that time, what would be thought of as a classic dancer's physique. But she watched others. She learned from looking at them. And eventually, she would find her way to London, where she would study dance and ballet, and then would eventually return stateside and become one of the premier members of the American Ballet Theater. Later, she would go on to choreograph classic films like Oklahoma, and certainly she choreographed legendary plays, musicals like Carousel and Brigadoon. Throughout her entire life, she advocated for the arts and for young people's participation in them. I was thinking of a quote that Agnes DeMille once said when I was reading today's gospel. She said this: "Living is a form of not being sure, not knowing what is next or how. The moment," she said, "you know how, you begin to die a little." The artist never knows entirely. We guess. We may be wrong, but we take leap after leap in the dark. In the passage that is today's gospel, we hear from Luke: accompanying him, meaning Jesus, were the 12, and some women who had been cured of evil spirits and from infirmities. The author of Luke portrays Jesus as an itinerant preacher who along the road calls people to be his students, his followers, his disciples. When you look at the people he chose, Jesus really took leap after leap. Sometimes it seems in the dark, but he always knew that the light of grace would lead these men. So he chooses these men who would be the least likely candidates to be students of rabbis in first century Palestine. And more than a few people looking at who was traveling with Jesus must have thought, wow, he must be crazy to be choosing the oddest people in the world to be his disciples. And then comes this moment. There are women with whom Jesus interacts. And that's something that did not happen in Judaism in the time of Jesus. In fact, there were many religious cautions and rituals and laws that kept men and women separate from one another, including men talking to women in public. Yet here is Jesus taking another leap. Some might think it's in the dark, but there was great light to it. These women hear him, and in his words, they find the calling to do their part, to follow him, and to provide out of their means so that he can continue to spread his message. Later on, these same women would stand at the foot of the cross. They would be the first to hear that Jesus was risen from the dead, and they would be the ones who would go to the disciples who ran away, the male disciples who ran away, to tell them that Jesus was alive. The women, Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Salome, and the others, would one day learn what Agnes DeMille said. Life is not about being sure of what will happen next or how it will happen. It's about moving forward, trusting the grace of God. Like DeMille, there were many who would not have thought that she would have become a great dancer. These women would never have been considered to be disciples. But they took this leap of faith in the dark, in a world that was not friendly to women. and they followed Jesus. They answered his call to serve. These women remind us that following Jesus is not about understanding everything, the how, the why, the when, the what. It's not about playing it safe, nor is it about assuming we're not qualified. It's always, always, always about taking a leap of faith. This past January 1st, on the Feast of Mary, the Mother of God, Pope Francis said this: "When women can transmit their gifts, the world finds itself more united and more peaceful. Therefore, an achievement for women is an achievement for all humanity." We live in a time when many achievements have been made by women, and certainly many more achievements for women than in the time of Jesus. Women who have taken the leap, often in the dark, to show their worth, to show their abilities, their strengths. And there's still a world that needs to be done in the church, in our society, and in the nation. Women still need to take their rightful place in many parts of the world. The challenge, I believe, from today's reading includes something else. It is a very strong reminder that all of us, no matter what our gender, are called to follow and to serve. Over the many years that I have been a priest, I often find people have the same sort of response when they're asked to serve, that many of them think they're not smart enough, they're not good enough, they're not worthy enough. Today's passage is a strong corrective to that attitude. Jesus is not looking for qualified, worthy, smart, or even good all the time people. He's looking for those who are willing to trust him, to trust his grace, and take leap after leap into the dark. Have you had a moment when you took a leap, when you took a risk? Maybe when you joined a ministry at church? Was there a moment when you took a risk to step out of your comfort zone, to follow the call of Jesus, and not what other people thought you should be doing? That's the kind of disciple that we're going to need as we continue to move through this pandemic. It's the kind of disciple that we're going to need to rebuild our parish, to renew our parish, to re-energize our parish in the months ahead. We're going to need a lot of people who are going to say, we will take the leap of faith and go where Jesus is calling. We may not exactly know how we will do it or what we will do, but what we know is that together, with the Lord's help, we can help one another take that leap.